This right here is the Hulk. Sebastian Valdez with the camo jersey from last season means that he won Scout Team Player of the Week. Popular player in 49ers fan circles as a rookie. Well, 49ers fans are going to love this about Sebastian Valdez entering year 2. This right here, you probably recognize him. That is Fred Warner. He's at a boxing gym in Dublin, East Bay. That is Sebastian Valdez. Got a very, very quick glimpse at Sebastian Valdez. Now we can go back to the start of the video. Credit to MJ Hamid01, who runs the boxing gym out there in Dublin. But Valdez is doing what Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw are doing. And I think that's a good idea for any 49ers player. I've gotten so many questions about the Hulk, Sebastian Valdez, even as the 49ers have spruced up the rest of their defensive line. And, well, that helps answer one of the questions. That's what Valdez is up to. And one thing that happened last year, as we saw Valdez win those Scout Team Player of the Week honors, the 49ers did something that they didn't have to do, but I think that Sebastian Valdez deserved. They called him up twice from the practice squad, even though they weren't planning on actually playing him in that weekend's game. The reason they did that is because on the practice squad, you're only making something like $10,000 or $20,000 a week. I don't know exactly what the number is, but it adds up to $200,000 or so salary. He got the 53-man roster payment, which is as a minimum around $800,000 for the maximum 2 weeks the 49ers called him up as a bonus, as an acknowledgement of the good work that he was doing on the scout team behind the scenes. I think that that's a clear sign that the 49ers believed that Sebastian Valdez, the Hulk, was on the right track for them last season and should be right in the mix for this team now that he's had another season to strengthen, another offseason to refine his form. So with that in mind, we're going to open up a show that looks at the 49ers depth chart, but focuses not on this side of the depth chart, the 53-man roster projection side, focuses on this side, the practice squad 90-man side. And we're going to be talking about players like Sebastian Valdez, who I believe have a chance to crack that 49ers 53-man roster. If you scroll down here, you'll find Valdez entering his second season at this spot, right next to Evan Anderson. And Valdez and Anderson and Mikhail Kamara and Cam Sample, all these guys. We're going to go through younger players as well, like Larry Worth, Jalen Stroman in the back seven of the 49ers defense. These are all players whom we're going to check in on over the course of OTAs and training camp to see how their bid to make the 49ers 53-man roster, or at least the practice squad, is going. And in the case of the Hulk, in the case of Sebastian Valdez, well, the 49ers have completely remade the D-line room outside of Nick Bosa over the course of the past 15 months. So the old is out. The new is in. And defensive tackle especially is a position where the 49ers have needed more juice. Maybe Valdez is going to have a chance to give that to them, because I could easily foresee a battle between Valdez and somebody like Grayson Halton for some playing time this year. Both ultra athletic guys. We talked about the relative athletic score of Grayson Halton being one of the many elite relative athletic scores that the 49ers brought in over the course of this draft. Well, don't forget what Valdez brought to the table for San Francisco when they signed him as an undrafted free agent last year. He is very agile. The short shuttle time, 4.46, is excellent. A three-cone time of 7.38 for a defensive tackle is also very, very good. He is very fast. The 40-yard dash is the slowest of these metrics, but you're not going to be counting on your defensive tackles to be running 40s. You look at that 10-yard split more than anything, and a 1.7 10-yard split is solid for Sebastian Valdez. Now, he's not a big defensive tackle, and some people may say, well, this guy, maybe he's in tweener territory at 301 pounds. He's a little bit heavier than a Grayson Halton, heavier than an Osa Digizua, but he's not nearly as heavy as a CJ West or an Alfred Collins. But, with the strength, and the reason that he's called the Hulk is because of the 34 bench press reps, the strength and the speed, maybe that pairs well with the 301-pound size. Mike made a point before we went live on this show that if he doesn't make the 53-man roster, it's going to be hard to get Sebastian Valdez cleared over to the practice squad this year. Why? Well, because Robert Saleh, who was the defensive coordinator when the 49ers first signed Valdez last year as an undrafted free agent, Robert Saleh is now in Tennessee. And given the fact that he was wearing those Scout Team Player of the Week camo jerseys often, given the fact that the 49ers gave him those 2 bonuses, calling him up as a courtesy, but he never made his debut. He was not in uniform during game day. He was inactive on Sunday. But the fact that the 49ers gave him that extra money last year indicates that the coaching staff really liked him and really, really wanted to reward him. And, well, if Saleh is now in Tennessee, it's certainly a player that I think he's going to want to keep his eye on. The defensive line for the 49ers, this is going to be one of the more fascinating seasons because, the coach is the same. Chris Kasarik is the same, but the coordinator is different, and the players have changed so markedly for the 49ers. I mean, we could go through all of these positions. Alfred Collins, second-year guy. CJ West, second-year guy. But Osa Odighizuwa has come in to completely transition that inside part of the defensive line. The stat that I love to give, and Sebastian Valdez was not part of this because he didn't play last year for the 49ers, but as he was developing, their defensive tackles in 2025 combined for only 56 pressures. Huge part of the reason why this team finished with a league low 20 sacks. Odighizuwa had 52 on his own. Grayson Halton, the 4th-round pick out of Oklahoma, was very responsible for a lot of pressure delivered by the Oklahoma Sooners defense last year, which is why I think he immediately is going to have a chance to bid as a disruptor for the 49ers on the interior. Valdez has had a chance now emulating a lot of these 3 techniques. I mean, he had some ferocious assignments for the 49ers scout team last year because they played a lot of good 3 techniques, so it was his job to emulate them. Valdez has a year of seasoning, and I think that he's usurped somebody like Evan Anderson in the 49ers defensive tackle pecking order. And then there's going to be some pressure from undrafted free agents beyond those guys, like a James Thompson Jr., like a Bryson Eason, 2 different types of defensive tackles, one of them more of a run stopper, one of them more of a lighter pass rusher, but both of them are going to be competing for playing time with 4 guys who, I'm not sure are going to make the 53-man roster, but they're going to give it their best shot. And I think the 49ers finally, it's been a while since they've had waived defensive players at the deadline picked up by other teams. So it's a good thing that they, I think, have the opportunity for that to happen this year because it does indicate that your roster is deeper. And it hadn't been that deep on the defensive side of the ball for the 49ers in several seasons. The pass rushing problems that San Francisco had last season, I think very, very tied to the fact that the defensive tackle position just didn't have the depth that it needed. And a lot of people will say, well, why didn't Sebastian Valdez play last year for the 49ers if it was so thin there? The guy was an undrafted free agent out of Washington with a lot of raw strength, with 34 bench press reps, but they understood that he needed refinement behind the scenes, and it wasn't going to be this mad dash to force Valdez into the starting lineup. It's kind of like baseball sometimes. You see a guy that's very raw. You have him in the minor leagues. The last thing you want to do is call him up and do so before he's ready and ruin the guy's confidence. These positions are so much more technical than people realize. I think that there's a lot of thought on the outside that somebody can come in with 34 bench press reps and his nickname is the Hulk and he can just wreck shop. But there's so much hand usage and just artistry, I think, that goes into effectively neutralizing opposing blockers. You've got to teach that stuff at the NFL level. You might be able to steamroll guys in college because you've got the strength advantage and you've got the size advantage. Very few guys in the NFL have a marked strength or size advantage. Like, everybody's big, everybody's fast in this league. It does end up coming down to who's able to technically win with his hands most often. And those nuances are not big. And that's something that Sebastian Valdez was working on last year. That's something that the 49ers have recognized, I think has been moving in the right direction. And now he's working with Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. Warner himself, I mean, I know he's not a defensive lineman, but obviously a master technician, a master of the detail. And 49ers fans should probably be very excited that Valdez is following some of the very established vets and a future Hall of Famer in Fred Warner with some of his offseason program. I'm going to open it up to questions. We're in a week here where the 49ers are going through the OTAs at their facility, but not 11 on 11 OTAs yet. Those are not going to start until next week. That's when we're going to see the main on-field portion in the Bay Area. Of course, I'm going to be there for all of it, and we're going to get to see, I speak of this roster. I can't wait to see the rookies who are all highlighted in green working with the veterans. Mini camp for the 49ers, that was not yet the case, right? At minicamp for San Francisco was only the rookies, maybe a few second-year guys who didn't play for the 49ers last year. But once the actual event begins next week of OTAs, 11 on 11s, we'll be on the field and we'll get to see how some of these guys stack up. And it's exciting because it looks like the 49ers have very, very good attendance this particular offseason. They've already finished all their contractual situations. Trent Williams is re-signed, so he probably will even be out there. If he's not, then I really wouldn't worry about it. But they're going to have a lot of veterans to create a little bit of a framework here for these rookies to operate in. Give them a little bit of a taste of how training camp is going to operate. Always good to get your feet wet in May and in June, and then everybody returns in late July for training camp. But this is what the roster looks like. This is what the setup is going to be. Remember, there are plenty of injuries along that defensive line. I'm not sure where Alfred Collins is right now, coming off of the shoulder surgery, but that was something that had to happen this offseason. So that might open some rotational spots for guys like Sebastian Valdez to get some more reps here over the course of OTAs, over the course of spring ahead of training camp. All right. Mike is going to feed me whatever news might hit while we're here during this show, and I'm going to answer some questions. And here, I like a very good comment right here. The Lone Wolf says that the defense got quicker. Yes, it did. The defense, athleticism has been the calling card for the 49ers. I talk about relative athletic scores that are really good. This is the relative athletic score for Sebastian Valdez, a 9.27. We saw a ton of relative athletic scores out of this 49ers draft class above 9, which is notable because it's very, very clear that the RAS is something that the 49ers have been emphasizing over the past 2 years. I think it's smart to look at measurables, to look at something that, is objective, because this is actually based on objective numbers, and use it as a North Star of sorts in your drafting process. I can tell you what, the 49ers didn't used to do this. 2023, that draft didn't have many good relative athletic scores at all. And that was their last bad draft, right? We go back to 2023. Jair Brown was not a good relative athletic score. Cam Latu in that draft was a terrible relative athletic score. It seemed that the 49ers were kind of just blindly picking guys, and when you're only looking at tape and you're not finding a way to normalize your evaluation across the board, college guys are going to be playing against different competition. The variance is wild in college football, right? A guy like Latu at Alabama, oftentimes he's going to be on the biggest, strongest, fastest team. So when you look at their tape, everybody on Alabama is going to look fast. And I think that the way to avoid performance evaluation mishaps is to compare a guy's objective measurables against everybody, right? Against all draftees from the past 40 years. And that's what the relative athletic score does. So as the 49ers have adapted their draft strategy, they have leaned more and more into this RAS, into this relative athletic score. Valdez was one of the guys who scored very well in 2025, and essentially everybody in the 49ers draft class scored well this past year. The defense is now the third youngest in football. It was basically the oldest in football just 15 months ago. So they've done a lot to renovate that side of the ball. And yes, as the comment said, the 49ers have gotten much quicker on the defensive side over the past 2 years. With Raheem Morris taking the helm, which 49ers defensive group will take a good step forward? Well, you would hope that the whole defense takes a step forward. It's all tied together. right? Everybody is always talking about, oh, the safeties need to get better. Well, the safeties aren't going to get much better if the pass rush doesn't get better, right? I mean, the 49ers only had the 20 sacks last year. They're down at the bottom in terms of pressures. As I said, the defensive tackles had only 56 combined pressures over the entire season. If the quarterback is not comfortable, the safety, then the safeties are going to be much more comfortable, right? The quarterbacks last year were way too comfortable against the 49ers. So they've got to up the pass rush to make the defensive backs better, to make the linebackers better. Fred Warner being back is going to make everybody better for San Francisco. You need the entire unit to step up. But if it doesn't work with the pass rush, then it's probably not going to work with any other position for San Francisco. The news today is in the NFC West. Cardinals quarterback Jacoby Brissett is not present as his team begins its first practice of voluntary OTAs. The Cardinals, just like any team, they can't force anybody to be at OTAs. It is voluntary. It's not like a veteran minicamp, but based on the reports, it's clear that this is contract related, that Jacoby Brissett wants more money. And Mike jokes, and this is funny, that you've never seen a QB hold out or not attend something due to contractual reasons after going 1-11. But that is the case. I mean, Jacoby Brissett put up some numbers last year. I think the 49ers game was a great example. I think he set an NFL record for completions against the 49ers, but it wasn't an efficient 50 whatever completions against the 49ers. They got their asses kicked in that game, right? The Cardinals, he was throwing 5 yards at a time, and the Cardinals weren't moving the ball nearly enough to keep up with an explosive 49ers offense. So the ongoings in Arizona, quite humorous indeed. Speaking of that, I've got a graphic for you guys. We've got third down efficiency, because this has been a topic on X, the app formerly known as Twitter. This is third down efficiency, third and fourth downs, ever since 2017. So essentially over the course of almost a decade at this point. So we are seeing right now how Brock Purdy has compared to the rest of the league over the course of the past 10 years. And we are seeing a crazy picture for at least some members of the national media who don't give Brock Purdy the respect that he deserves. Yes, you want to be further to the right and further up. Patrick Mahomes and Brock Purdy have been in a world of their own, and third down, fourth down, that's the quarterback's down. Those are the downs, especially when it's a longer distance to go, where it is much, much harder for any scheme to help a quarterback, where a quarterback is going to have to overcome on his own. Now, what this tells us right here, obviously Mahomes and Purdy are very, very good. This also tells us that Jimmy Garoppolo deserves a lot more respect for what he was able to do with the 49ers. He also was money in those third down situations. Now, somebody like Mac Jones, nowhere near where Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy have been with the 49ers. So this is obviously system controlled. Kyle Shanahan has been the coach throughout all of this. And then even worse than Jones, and Jones has been solid for the 49ers, don't get me wrong, but there's a massive, massive gap between Jones and what Jimmy did. And then obviously there's another big gap between what Jimmy and Brock Purdy has been able to do for the 49ers. But even worse, and not even on this chart because they didn't have enough snaps to qualify, are guys like CJ Beathard and Nick Mullins. So it does matter who plays quarterback for Kyle Shanahan, because when he's got a good one, and he's had two truly, truly good quarterbacks, Jimmy Garoppolo and then a transcendent one in Brock Purdy, well, the offense obviously looks very, very different. Now, I don't want to take too much away, though, from Mac Jones. Jones was excellent operating the system this past year. He was top 10 in QBR. I just don't think that he had the mobility to be a third and fourth down guy at the same level that we have seen from Purdy, who obviously is way up here. So just a little statistic for you guys here as we go through our Monday afternoon show. Back to the comment section. See what questions we have. By the way, happy 1 month birthday to Savannah Lombardi today, who actually crossed 10 pounds yesterday. I mean, we talk about all these measurements, and we talked about the relative athletic score that she had at the time of birth. I think it was 8 pounds, 5 ounces at the time of birth, over 10 pounds now. So the relative athletic score is holding up very, very well for Savannah Lombardi. I am ready for some good questions. I'm starting to scroll through this comment section. How fast is Savannah? I think 4.28 was the 40 time. She's yet to run it, though. That's just a projection. Can I give some insight into how the 49ers special teams have improved, if they've improved at all? Well, I'm not going to know until I actually see the special teams out there. We've got to figure out who the returner is for the 49ers. Remember, they lost Sky Moore. Having Eddie Pinheiro back for the whole season this time, right, because he wasn't around in week 1, is a big improvement. The one area where they, I think, really had a lot of meat still left on the bone was punter. It wasn't Wisnowski last year. Sorry, Thomas Morstead did not score well last year at around age 40. So the 49ers have gone out and they didn't re-sign Morstead. They have instead signed 2 different punters to compete, a lefty, Corliss Waitman, and a righty, Jack Bowmeister, a rookie out of Texas. And they're hoping that one of these 2 guys just grabs that job and runs with it and gives them a big upgrade over what they had last year in Thomas Morstead, who ranked in the 20s as a punter. So Morstead did a good job holding. I think they were happy to have a veteran presence there. And Wisnowski was dealing with injury issues before that. But punter is one spot where the 49ers can definitely be better. They obviously were not happy with how they finished last season, giving up that kick return to Rashid Shaheed against the Seattle Seahawks to open the game for a touchdown. Before that, it had been much better in the terms of coverage for the 49ers, but they definitely want to make sure they don't replicate the struggles of the final game of the season. Seattle had the number 1 special teams unit in football. 49ers were number 2 over the course of the regular season. Jason says he can't wait to see the Hulk on the field during the regular season. You liked what you saw in the preseason. I think a lot of people were very impressed with the Hulk, not only during the preseason, but also during practice. The looks that he gave the 49ers on scout team last year, and I talked to Sebastian about this in the locker room. Every week I would check in with him to see who he emulated, and some of the biggest names that the 49ers faced at that 3 technique position, he had to play the scout team role. And the 49ers obviously believed that he did a good job. I mean, we go back here. These camo jerseys, they give out to 3 players a week. And Sebastian Valdez got this camo jersey multiple times for the 49ers last season. Should the 49ers bring in Cam Jordan since they need another pass rusher? I think, we'll be keeping a close eye on this closer to training camp, but I think that another veteran might work. Listen, I've been telling you for months that they're interested in Joey Bosa at the right price. Why at the right price? Well, because you're not going to pay a player in the Sam Okawanu role $10 million, right? You're going to want it at less than $10 million. Is Joey willing to play at a discount? So far, no. Would Cam Jordan be willing to play at a discount? Would the 49ers be willing to bring in the former New Orleans Saint? I don't know the answer on both of those questions. Very obviously, the 49ers have yet to find a veteran at a price point that works for them and a player that they're interested in at this position. Otherwise, they would have brought somebody in. But that defensive end position, one where the 49ers will look for some drop ability, right, with Raheem Morris operating a slightly different defense and adding more multiplicity than the one that Robert Saleh had on the table. That's adaptability is going to be really important for the 49ers. You also want to add a little bit more pass rushing juice. Sam Okawanu, I think, has been a solid rotational piece for the 49ers, but if you really want to up this to the next level, then you probably would like to bring in somebody who has more sack production, who has more pressure production lately, who might be able to give you some more flexibility when it comes to those coverage drops that we think we're going to see more of from a Raheem Morris. Cam Jordan does have an offer on the table from the New Orleans Saints. You do wonder if the Cal product, he went to college at Berkeley, wants to play his entire career with one team, which is what it would be, or if he doesn't believe the Saints can go anywhere this year, if he wants to pick one season here at the very end to go with a contender. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know exactly how much Joey Bosa wants. All I do know is that Kyle Van Noy, an edge rusher, somebody who has 3-4 experience, has straight up said that he would love to play with the 49ers, but I don't know if that interest from San Francisco's end is mutual. And Joey Bosa did just get married, as I mentioned on another show recently. So as Eric Gomes says, Joey Bosa's on his honeymoon at the moment. I don't think he wants to sign and play anywhere during OTAs. He doesn't have to. This guy's been around the league and he's been a Pro Bowl player. And he was a Pro Bowl guy last year. He's playing really well, especially early on for the Buffalo Bills. I think one thing of emphasis here, and we saw it with Eric Kendricks last season, and I think that Joey Bosa might be at that stage of his career where he could treat this like Eric Kendricks. 49ers got the very best of Eric Kendricks late, right? I mean, he had the pass breakup that sealed the playoff win at Philadelphia. Joey's best football in 2025 came early. He forced 4 fumbles in the first 5 games of the season. I thought he tapered off a little bit if you watch the tape for Buffalo late. If you're Joey Bosa, why not just treat this like Eric Kendricks? Maybe, sign earlier if you want to get more money over the course of the season, but treat the season in a way and treat the offseason in a way that allows your body, as you're getting older, to peak late in the year. So that way you're playing your best football, and that's going to be the most valuable thing for the 49ers if they do sign Joey Bosa. You're playing your best ball week 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, heading into the postseason. That's what they got from Kendricks last year, who kind of just sat around, worked out, made sure his body wasn't worn down, and picked the team, and it was the 49ers where it would best fit. Again, I wouldn't advocate for something that extreme with Joey Bosa, but I wouldn't be surprised if he says, okay, I'm going to use this offseason to just recuperate. I'm going to get married, which he did up in Napa. Congratulations to him. I guess Nick Bosa had a speech at the wedding with his great efficiency of words, as John Lynch likes to say. Go on your honeymoon, do all that stuff, and then be ready for the regular season, right? And that's it seems to be a very, very logical progression for Joey Bosa's career. He's still a productive guy, but he wants to make sure that he peaks at the right time. Mike says, if Joey has all bad offers, what's the rush to sign? There isn't one. There is zero rush to sign because you now have all control, based on the offers at least, of where you play. So you might as well, if the offers aren't going to be great, you might as well pick the team that you'd most rather be at. And you'd also want to use some time to your advantage in any potential negotiation. Dave says that Jauan Jennings is going to play with a chip on his shoulder against the 49ers. I got news for you, man. Jauan Jennings plays with a chip on his shoulder no matter who's on the other side. Jauan Jennings doesn't need any extra motivation. That would be the fakest motivation ever, considering the fact the 49ers offered Jauan Jennings more money than he ultimately ended up signing for with the Minnesota Vikings. Yeah, by that point, the offer was no longer on the table from the 49ers. But the 49ers offered Jauan Jennings north of $15 million if you include all the incentives. I think it probably was around $17 million or so. He wanted over 20. It happens. The two sides didn't meet eye to eye, and ultimately that offer was no longer on the table, and the 49ers did not keep Jauan Jennings beyond 2025. But it would seem ridiculous to me if Jauan Jennings was somehow upset at the 49ers for how they handled this contractual situation, because he wanted over 20 and nobody offered him over 20. Ended up signing for what, $13 million with the Minnesota Vikings. So Jauan is great. Love Jauan. He's gonna play with a chip on his shoulder no matter what the situation is. He could be playing back at Blackman High School in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. That's where Jauan Jennings runs his football camp every summer. And Even if he was playing against the high schoolers there, I'm sure Jauan would have a chip on his shoulder because that's who Jauan is. That's what makes him such an effective player. But nothing that the 49ers did contractually here should have been an affront to Jauan Jennings. And if he decides to make it one, well, then that's all in his head, right? Because the 49ers actually did offer Jauan Jennings more money than he signed with the Minnesota Vikings for. As Dave says, I'll miss him. No replacing third and Jauan, unless you replace him with third and Dejan Stribling. But yes, Jauan Jennings was clutch. He deserves his flowers for the work that he put in with the 49ers over the half decade, and that's that. Then you move on. Now the 49ers have gotten faster. They think they've gotten a great blocker. Can they get that attitude that they got from Jauan Jennings with Dejan Stribling? We shall see, but they're going to take their chances with the son of a Marine. Jose asks, is there any way the 49ers can void Brandon Aiyuk's contract? Well, yeah, the 49ers, I think, can probably take this to the NFLPA and maybe ultimately even an outside court. I don't know exactly how this would work since this would be all new, but they could try to get back some of the signing bonus and some of the option bonus they paid out in 2025 since Aiyuk left the squad. They paid him $48.4 million over the course of the past 2 seasons. And one can certainly argue that Aiyuk did not earn that $48.4 million. So, yeah, the 49ers have some recourse there. As far as the rest of the contract goes, they've already voided the guarantee for this season successfully. So the answer to your question is yes, that's possible, and it has been done. They don't owe Brandon Aiyuk another cent. Right now, they're keeping him to keep things as beneficial as possible with their own salary cap and also to protect themselves in case Brandon Aiyuk goes and wants to sign elsewhere. So the answer to your question is yes, the 49ers have already done all that they can, I think, to protect themselves contractually, minus trying to go after some of the money that they've already paid Brandon Aiyuk, and that is TBD at this point. I think that let's see the 49ers resolve what's in front of them first before rewinding into the past and looking to try to get some of that money back. But if they do get some of that money back, I would think that the 49ers would actually get the salary cap credits back for that as well, because the cap has to be reflective of what you've actually distributed to a player. Am I planning to do a season record prediction episode? Yeah, but not until I actually see the 49ers practice and I know, what their roster is going to look like entering the season. I think, doing a prediction episode in May kind of just screams that you don't know what to talk about regarding the 49ers. I got plenty to talk about. I could talk about the Hulk today. I could talk about Grayson Halton tomorrow. I promised today, and we're going to get more into that we'd get further into the right side of the 49ers depth chart. So that's this side. We can start talking about some of these players and their chances to make the 49ers roster. And we could check in on this every week. But, when I identify players on the surface without injuries, a shot to make the 49ers 53-man, Khil Dinkins out of Penn State, the tight end, is definitely one of them. I think that given all the defensive end injuries, Bosa, Michael Williams, Keon White all coming off of stuff, Michael Kamara out of Indiana, the sack master out of Indiana, I think he's got a chance to make that 49ers 53-man roster. So does Cam Sample, the veteran signee from the Cincinnati Bengals. You wonder, Larry Worth, I know he's going to be competing at linebacker, but he was a safety in college at Arkansas, and we know about multiplicity and what Raheem Morris wants to bring to the table. You wonder if Larry Worth can make a name for himself and make this roster for San Francisco. Jalen Stroman, the rookie, is more of a box safety. And then here's a name that I don't want people to forget about because the 49ers really like him as a prospect and as a player, is Jacob Robinson. He was shut down last year. It was a redshirt year because of a broken forearm during the preseason. But Jacob Robinson is a player who's going to have a chance to make some noise for the 49ers. And before you say, oh, the roster's too crowded, if Jacob Robinson impresses the 49ers more than a Jack Jones, say Jack Jones, Robinson's under contract for a full 3 years. Jones is only a 1-year guy. You like the guys with more team control in the event of a tie, right? And you can't forget about guys at the back end right here of this roster. Now, Darrell Luter Jr., he doesn't have that advantage anymore because he's entering the final year of his rookie contract. So it's not like the 49ers have a ton of runway with him. But with Jacob Robinson, they still have 2 years of runway. That inherently is more appealing to a team than somebody only on a 1-year deal like a Jack Jones. So we're going to keep our eyes on the entire back half of this roster. I'm going to go through this with progress reports on a week-by-week basis. This is simply an initial look at some of the under-the-radar bubble players for the 49ers. If you have anybody in particular that you want me to talk more about right now, go ahead and toss his name into the comment section, and I will. I will, pun intended, Will Pauling. Explosive guy, 40-plus inch vertical leap receiver out of Notre Dame. Put on his highlight tape. It's definitely explosive, and he's reliable too. Somebody like Wesley Grimes, a taller receiver, has good highlight tape out of NC State. It's really hard for me to project them making the 53-man, though, just given the fact that if everybody's healthy for the 49ers and stays that way, your 53-man roster probably looks like this. It's probably Mike Evans, Ricky Pearsall, Christian Kirk, Dejon Stribling, Demarcus Robinson, Jordan Watkins, and probably a seventh in Jacob Cowing, right? But the second guys start getting hurt, and it has happened for San Francisco in the past, that's where Will Pauling, that's where Wesley Grimes might have an opening for the 49ers. Let me know, though. I'm keeping a close eye on the chat section right here to see who people want me to talk about. Nick Martin's going to make the team. Nick Martin might start at the Sam linebacker position. Nick is fast. Nick is faster than Fred Warner. He runs a 4.5 40. And last year, he worked his way up to the Sam spot. And if the 49ers want more adaptability, multiplicity, as Raheem Morris calls it on the back end, somebody like a Nick Martin is definitely a player to watch, given his athleticism. Nick, this is a great example of somebody who really developed last year, and fans probably didn't get a chance to notice because of bad injury luck, but he was all out of sorts in the preseason, right? Do you guys remember that? Was it against the Broncos in the preseason? Nick Martin was just all over the place, shooting the wrong gap. He just looked lost. He was spinning around at linebacker, and everybody, oh God, this is rough. This is going to take some polishing for Nick Martin. Well, he went back to the lab, and we expected that too, right? I mean, this is somebody who only played his first 4 games of his final season at Oklahoma State. Then he got hurt, and so he was on the shelf for a long time. Then he got drafted to the 49ers, and then he saw his first game action in the preseason, and yeah, he looked out of sorts. And I don't think that anybody who knows football was surprised by that. But he was lightning in a bottle with athletic ability, one of the really high relative athletic scores. And then he resurfaced later in the season. And he played some special teams, which is what got him the opportunity at Sam linebacker. He started the game against Cleveland for the 49ers at Sam. He worked his way into the trust necessary to start a game at a linebacker position for the 49ers. And that's where the concussion happened. And it's just too bad, because I think that we would have seen Nick Martin down the stretch, and I think people probably would have been a whole lot more excited about him over the course of this offseason had he been able to play to finish last offseason. It was a bad concussion because he couldn't get off the protocol until right when the 49ers said goodbye for the season. But thankfully, he's off the protocol. He's working hard, and I think that Nick Martin has a chance, if he could stay healthy for the 49ers, to make real noise at linebacker. Like, if you look at the plan for San Francisco beyond this season, Dre Greenlaw at the weak side linebacker spot is only under contract for 1 year. You're going to need a new will linebacker past this season. I think that obviously Jaden Duggar is the rookie out of Louisiana, is going to give the 49ers as many thoughts as he can regarding what he can play, and he could be a rover type that plays anywhere. But Nick Martin, as far as standard linebacker, he's got a little bit more heftiness to him than a Jaden Duggar. That's somebody that I could see filling in for Dre Greenlaw right away beyond this 2026 season. So there's a reason why they were comfortable trading D Winters away to Dallas. And I think one of those reasons was Nick Martin. That's more of a long-term play, right? Than anything. You need to have a plan at linebacker moving forward, and they weren't going to extend D Winters. Nick Martin, though, is somebody they still have under contract for 3 more seasons. Greg wants to talk about Carver Willis. Let me promise you something. There's going to be a lot about Carver Willis tomorrow. I've got a big article coming out on the San Francisco Standard. I talked to Jed Fish, who's the head coach of the University of Washington. So we're going to have some good Jed Fish content. He was Sebastian Valdez's coach at Washington as well in 2024. There is no stronger pipeline of college talent to the San Francisco 49ers than the University of Washington to San Francisco, or Jed Fish to the 49ers. And that's what we're going to go through over the course of tomorrow. So be ready for that. We're going to talk a little bit more about Carver Willis, who's got a chance to start for the 49ers at left guard. It's dropping tomorrow on the Standard, and of course, we're going to have a video as well. What does Purdy need to do to be the MVP? To have, well, he wasn't all that far away the other year, and if he, hadn't had the game against Baltimore, he probably wins it. He should have still won it, even with that game, just given how historically good he was in 2023. So I think that until Purdy wins a Super Bowl, because that seems to be what gets a lot of national media on board, fair or not, until Purdy wins a Super Bowl, he has to be close to perfect to win the MVP. And he was almost perfect in 2023. And he wasn't because of the Baltimore game. We all get it. But the standard for Purdy is different and tougher than it is for other quarterbacks because of draftism. I get it, but this will be undeniable. This kind of performance, see him in the upper right there, third down performance. This will be undeniable once he does win a Super Bowl. And I think it is coming because of how good Brock Purdy is. And now the 49ers have finally paired him with some separators in the receiver room. And it looks like the defense can be on the way back up for San Francisco after the big renovation. Once the 49ers win a Super Bowl, once Purdy helps them author that trip to the Lombardi Trophy, then MVPs will come much more easily, because I think that the casual voters will be much, much more informed and in line. Well, they'll probably never be informed, but their votes, the commoners' vote, will much more readily recognize the greatness that we've seen from Brock Purdy ever since 2022. Probably the same for Kyle Shanahan winning Coach of the Year, although Coach of the Year is a weird award. It typically just goes to a coach who's presided the greatest turnaround, right? So you have to not be good the year prior. The problem with the 49ers is that they've just been really good basically every year. Even 2024, where they ran out of gas, it was still a fairly high DVOA team, especially offensively in 2024. So you don't have these situations where the 49ers turn it around from a 2-14 season to be good the next year, because they just never sink to those depths with Kyle Shanahan. This is a good question from William, and we're going to use this to continue to tease what we do tomorrow. Can Carver Willis win the center position over Jake Brendel if given the chance? Maybe not this next year, or at least to start the year, because of the playbook knowledge that goes into that. But part of my Jed Fish interview that's coming out tomorrow is that Washington gave Carver Willis snaps at center at the end of practices, knowing that he was going to be an interior lineman. Even though he was playing left tackle for Washington, they knew that he was going to have to be an interior lineman at the NFL level. They think he's smart enough. I think the 49ers believe he's smart enough. And Brendel's 34. He's going to be 34 this year. And he's under contract for his final season. So this is, the 49ers have to figure out a plan moving forward at center. And Carver Willis might be part of that plan. Stay tuned. Chris says, I think Purdy's got to beat a McDonald defense soundly in order to win an MVP. Well, guess what happened in the season opener last year? Purdy went into Seattle, and the 49ers would have won by multiple scores had they had Eddie Pinheiro by then. Let's put it that way. They missed 2 field goals in that game. And Purdy They put up 400 yards, not 400. They were above 360, I believe, yards of total offense against the Seattle Seahawks defense without much health in the receiving department, with George Kittle hurt for most of the game. Like, Purdy was really, really damn good against what was a historically good Seattle Seahawks defense. And obviously the 49ers won the game. He's shown the capability of delivering against Seattle. He just has to have some help from his teammates, just like any quarterback would have to have some help against historically good defense. Even against the bad defense, you need some help. That's how the NFL works. So 49ers went out, invested in the receiver room. They should have gotten healthier over the course of this offseason. They get their first look at the Seahawks in week 5, and we'll see how Brock Purdy and company do. But, I do think it's correct. If he wants to win the MVP, he's going to have to lead the 49ers. Like I said, he's going to have to be close to perfect. So he's going to have to lead the 49ers to probably the top spot in the division. And that's going to involve beating the Seahawks and beating the Rams. Mike does think that the Seahawks defense will regress. Defenses typically do regress when they're that good. We'll see how Mike McDonald does with slight personnel deterioration for the Seattle Seahawks here in 2026. Grayson Halton. I talk about how athletic Sebastian Valdez is. Halton cut from a similar cloth. And Halton's going to be a designated, I don't want to say designated pass rusher, probably not the right way to term it, but he's going to be a pass rusher. How do you say it for a defensive tackle? Because it's not going to be like Romello Height, somebody that's only in there in pass rushing situations. One cool thing I'll give you, if you want a nugget on Grayson Halton, one cool thing is that Oklahoma's run defense did not fall off a cliff when he was in the game. There was actually a metric in run stop win rate where he ranked number 1 in the nation last year, but it was on limited snaps. So the key is that he can't be a liability against the run, so he could stay in there and give himself more pass rushing opportunities. And I think the 49ers saw that this guy, even though he's not going to be some kind of massive stalwart like an Alfred Collins or CJ West against heavier run fronts, he can hold his own in there. And if he can hold his own against run fronts, then his explosiveness is going to be more useful and more available in some of those pass rushing situations. You think the 49ers are definitely beating the Rams week 1? I'm not as sure as you, but I might pick the 49ers to win that game. I think, people forget how good the 49ers were when they were fully healthy last year. And I think they've gotten better this season. Like, take the fully healthy 2025 49ers and compare them with a fully healthy 2026 49ers. The 2025 49ers were already really good. They went into Seattle and statistically dominated the Seahawks week 1. I think the 2026 49ers fully healthy are better. So yes, I do think that they have got a very good chance to beat the Seahawks and beat the Rams, but I do think that division is going to be a war. You'd really like to see more about the defense as a unit. There is a lack of data, but I'll say this. If the pass rush is better, and it couldn't be worse, right? How can it get worse than last in the league? If the pass rush is better, the rest of the defense should follow suit. I thought the corners were solid last year. I've gone into the data. We've done shows on that. The corners did not play poorly last year. Upton Stout was really, really good for the 49ers in nickel. The safeties, that's way more debatable, but they need a better pass rush for sure. The missed tackle rates were too high. The linebackers were missing Fred Warner, so that's a tough data analysis. The pass rush was deficient, especially after Bosa went down. The pass rush was deficient. What have the 49ers done over the past 15 months? They have completely rehauled the defensive line outside of Bosa. The pass rush has to be better in 2026, and I think it will be. And if it is, then I think that the defense is going to trend up. Here's another data point. When Michael Williams was available for the 49ers last year, they were a top 10 run defense. When he wasn't, they were a bottom 10 run defense. So Stop the run, have some fun. You see how the 49ers have tried to build this over the course of the past 2 seasons. All right, everybody, hit that subscribe button. Big piece on Jed Fish and that 49ers pipeline from UW coming out tomorrow. We talked about UW today with Sebastian Valdez. There's the big W from UW. Hit the subscribe button. We'll talk to everybody very, very soon.